The screaming had been going on for 6 months. Not the occasional infant cry that pierced the night and faded with a bottle or a clean diaper. Not the frustrated wails of a teething child or the protest of naptime refused. This was something else entirely. This was the sound of a soul being torn apart, breath by breath, night after night, until even the ancient stones of Shadowmere Castle seemed to weep in sympathy. Katya Volkov heard it the moment she stepped through the servants' entrance. Her worn boots, held together with wire and hope, squeaked against marble floors that cost more than her entire village had been worth. The sound made her freeze midstep. It was a child. The baby. And the cry carried a note she recognized from her darkest memories. The sound of someone who had stopped expecting comfort. "That's the princess," whispered Marta, the head housekeeper, a severe woman whose gray hair was pulled so tight it seemed to stretch her already pinched face. She grabbed Katya's elbow with fingers like iron. "You'll get used to it. We all have." Katya doubted that very much. She was 24 years old, desperately poor, and one of the last survivors of the Volkov family line. The village of Zaria had been destroyed 3 years ago, burned to ash in what the human territories called a vampire raid, though no one had ever confirmed what really happened. Katya had been away, working in the city, when it happened. She'd returned to find nothing but charred foundations and shallow graves. The graves had been too small. Far too small. Now she stood in the servants' hall of the most powerful vampire in the northern territories, having answered an advertisement that promised room, board, and enough pay to finally leave the nightmare behind. Household staff needed. Shadowmere Castle. Discreet. Desperate inquiries welcome. That last part had caught her attention. Vampires didn't do desperate. "This way," Marta said, pulling her down a corridor lined with portraits of severe-looking immortals. "His Majesty is particular about the staff. You'll address him as Your Majesty or Sire. You do not make eye contact unless spoken to. You do not ask questions. You do not gossip. And for the love of all that's holy, you do not mention the child's crying. Why is she? We don't ask questions." Marta's grip tightened. 17 nurses in 6 months. All dismissed. "You're the 18th. Do better." They climbed a spiral staircase that seemed to ascend into darkness itself. The crying grew louder with each step, raw and relentless. Katya's chest tightened. She'd heard crying like this before, in the hospital ward where her sister had. She couldn't think about that now. At the top of the stairs, 2 guards in midnight armor flanked a pair of ornate doors. They didn't look at Marta or Katya. They simply stared ahead with the blank expression of men who'd learned to tune out suffering. Marta pushed open the doors. The nursery was beautiful in the way crypts are beautiful, expensive, cold, and utterly devoid of warmth. Silk curtains the color of twilight hung from tall windows. A crib of dark wood and silver stood in the center like an altar. Toys lay scattered across plush carpets, untouched and perfect. And in the crib, a small figure thrashed, her face red and tear-streaked, her tiny fists beating the air in helpless fury. She couldn't have been more than 8 months old. Standing beside the crib, looking like death personified, was King Theron Ashmore. He was exactly what Katya expected and nothing like it at all. Ancient. That much was obvious in the way he held himself, in the weight of centuries behind his silver blue eyes. Tall, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders and a face that might have been carved from marble by someone who understood beauty but not humanity. He wore simple black, no crown, no ceremony, but his presence filled the room like a physical force. He looked exhausted. "Another one," he said flatly, not looking up from his daughter. His voice was deep, controlled, but Katya heard the edge of something breaking beneath it. "Marta, I told you." "This one is different, Your Majesty," Marta said quickly. "Strong references. Experience with difficult children. And she needs the work." For the first time, Theron looked at Katya. His eyes locked onto hers and she felt the world tilt. There was power there, ancient and terrible, but also something she hadn't expected to see in a vampire king's gaze: desperation. "Can you stop her crying?" he asked. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. Katya looked at the baby. At the way her little body shook with exhaustion. At the way she cried with her eyes squeezed shut, like she'd given up on anyone seeing her. "I can try," Katya said quietly. "Then try." Theron stepped back, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. "Please." That last word, "please," from a king who could command nations, was what decided it. Katya approached the crib slowly. The baby's crying didn't stop, but it hitched slightly, as if she sensed a change. Up close, Katya could see how beautiful she was despite her distress. Pale wisps of silver hair, delicate features and eyes, when they finally opened, that were the color of storm clouds. Those eyes looked directly at Katya, and something cold and sharp pierced through her chest. She knew those eyes. Impossible. She was being ridiculous. Grief made you see things that weren't there, made you search for the dead in the faces of strangers. But still, Katya reached into the crib and the baby didn't flinch. That was the first strange thing. Every other person in this castle had likely approached with clinical efficiency or nervous hesitation. Katya simply lifted the child into her arms, settling her against her chest the way she'd once held. The baby's crying stuttered, stopped, hiccuped. The silence that followed was so absolute that Katya heard the guards outside shift their weight. Theron went very, very still. The baby stared up at Katya with wide, wet eyes. Her tiny hand reached up, grasping at Katya's worn sleeve. And then, in the softest, most broken little voice, she made a sound that wasn't quite a word but carried the weight of recognition. Katya's throat closed. Without thinking, she began to hum. A lullaby from her childhood, from Zarya, from a life that had burned away. The melody was old, older than memory, passed down through generations of Volkov women. The words rose unbidden, soft and aching, in a language she hadn't spoken aloud in 3 years. "Sleep, my joy, sleep." The baby went limp in her arms. Her breathing evened. Within 30 seconds, impossibly, she was asleep. When Katya finally looked up, Theron was staring at her with an expression that bordered on shock. "What did you just do?" His voice was barely above a whisper. I just sang to her." Katya's heart hammered. "A lullaby. It's Russian. From my Russian." Theron's eyes narrowed. "You speak Russian?" "Yes, Your Majesty. I was from the Eastern Territories. Before." She didn't finish. Couldn't. Theron moved closer, his steps silent despite his size. He looked down at his daughter, sleeping peacefully for what was clearly the first time in months. 6 months, he said quietly. 6 months she's been like this. Doctors, healers, specialists from across the realm. Blood magic, sleep enchantments, every remedy known to vampire and human medicine alike. He looked at Katya. "And you walk in and sing her to sleep in Russian." "I don't understand it either, Your Majesty." "Neither do I." His jaw tightened. "But you're not leaving. Not until I understand why my daughter responds to you and you alone." "Your Majesty." "Name your price. Whatever you need, it's yours. Just." His voice cracked, just slightly. "Just make her stop hurting." Katya looked down at the sleeping infant in her arms. At the impossible familiarity of her tiny face. At the way she clutched Katya's finger even in sleep, like she was afraid to let go. "I'll stay," Katya whispered. "For her." Theron nodded once, sharply. Then he turned and walked to the window, his shoulders rigid with the kind of control that came from centuries of practice. "Marta will show you to your quarters. You'll sleep in the adjoining room. You do not leave her side unless I permit it. Is that clear?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Good." He paused, then added without turning around, "Her name is Serafina." Serafina. The name hit Katya like a physical blow. It was beautiful. It was regal. It was wrong. But Katya didn't say that. She simply held the sleeping child closer and wondered why every maternal instinct she'd thought had died with her sister was suddenly, impossibly roaring back to life. The adjoining room was small but comfortable, more space than Katya had occupied in 3 years. A narrow bed with clean sheets. A wash basin. A window that overlooked gardens she suspected never saw sunlight. She laid Serafina in the crib carefully, half expecting her to wake and resume the screaming. But the baby simply rolled onto her side, one small thumb finding its way to her mouth. Katya stood there for a long moment, watching her breathe. This isn't your sister. She's gone. This is someone else's child. But the ache in her chest said otherwise. There was a soft knock. Marta entered without waiting for permission, carrying folded linens and a stern expression. Luck? She said flatly. That's all that was. Don't let it go to your head. I don't think it was luck. Well, I don't care what you think. His Majesty has given orders. You are to stay with the child at all times. You will be paid triple the normal rate. Meals will be brought to you. A senior nurse will check on the princess's health twice daily, but you are her primary caretaker. Marta's eyes narrowed. 17 nurses before you, girl. All of them more qualified. All of them dismissed. Don't get comfortable. Katya met her gaze. I don't plan to. After Marta left, Katya sat on the edge of her bed and let the exhaustion wash over her. She'd been traveling for 2 days to reach Shadowmere, sleeping in barns and begging rides from merchants. Her clothes were threadbare. Her boots had holes. The last real meal she'd eaten had been 4 days ago. And now she was living in a vampire king's castle, caring for his mysteriously inconsolable daughter, for reasons she couldn't begin to explain. She looked at Serafina, still sleeping peacefully. Who are you? Katya whispered. And why do you feel like mine? The first week established a pattern. Serafina would wake, sometimes every 2 hours, sometimes after 4, and immediately begin to cry. The moment Katya picked her up, the crying would stop. If Katya spoke to her in Russian, sang to her, hummed those old lullabies from Zaria, the baby would calm completely. If anyone else tried to hold her, she screamed. Theron came every day. Sometimes twice. He would stand in the doorway, watching as Katya fed Serafina, changed her, played with her. He never spoke much, but Katya could feel his presence like a weight against her spine. On the 8th day, he finally broke his silence. Tell me about yourself, he said. Katya looked up from where she sat on the floor, Serafina propped against her knees, babbling happily at a wooden rattle. Your Majesty? You're from the Eastern Territories. Zaria, you said? His eyes were unreadable. Tell me. Katya's throat tightened. There's not much to tell. It was a small village. Farming mostly. My family had lived there for generations. Had. It was destroyed. 3 years ago. She kept her voice flat, clinical. Raiders. Or vampires. Or humans pretending to be vampires. No one knows. The entire village burned. You weren't there. No. I was working in the city. By the time I got word and traveled back. She trailed off, focusing on Serafina instead of the memories. Nothing left but ash. Family? The word was a knife. My parents. My younger sister, Anya. Katya's voice cracked despite herself. She was 16. She'd just gotten engaged to a boy from the next village over. They found her. She stopped. I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this. I asked. Katya looked at him, then really looked. Theron stood framed in the doorway like a portrait of controlled grief, and she saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Understanding. Serafina's mother, he said quietly. My queen. She died giving birth. I'm sorry. Don't be. His voice was flat. She wanted this child desperately. Vampires rarely reproduce. Our bodies resist it, fight it. She was willing to risk everything for the chance. The pregnancy nearly killed her 3 times before. He stopped. Serafina was born under a blood moon. The healers said the magic was too strong, the transition too violent. My queen bled out before I could. He didn't finish. Serafina, as if sensing the shift in mood, made a soft questioning sound. Katya picked her up instinctively, settling her against her shoulder. She doesn't remember her, Theron continued. She was only hours old when, but she's been like this since. Crying. Refusing everyone. The doctors said it was colic, then trauma, then a dozen other theories that meant nothing. His eyes fixed on Katya. Until you. I don't understand it either, Your Majesty. Neither do I. He moved closer and Katya fought the urge to back away. But I intend to find out. On the 10th day, Dr. Elias Crane arrived. He was a vampire of indeterminate age, they all were, with silver hair pulled back in a neat queue and eyes like chips of ice. He examined Serafina with clinical precision while Katya hovered nearby, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. Healthy, Crane pronounced finally. Weight good. Reflexes normal. No signs of illness or magical corruption. Then why does she scream? Theron demanded. Infants are unpredictable, Your Majesty. Some are simply more sensitive than others. Crane glanced at Katya. Though I confess, the sudden change in behavior is unusual. When did you say the new nurse arrived? 10 days ago. And the child has been calm since? Yes. Crane frowned. May I? He reached for Serafina. The baby immediately began to wail. Crane pulled back, startled. Katya scooped Serafina up, and the crying stopped instantly. Extraordinary, Crane murmured. The child has imprinted on you. Quite strongly, in fact. I've never seen attachment form so quickly. Is it dangerous? Theron asked. No, but it's highly unusual for an infant to bond so completely with someone other than the birth mother, especially within days. Crane studied Katya with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Tell me, Miss Volkov, have you had children of your own? No. Siblings? A younger sister. She died. Recently? 3 years ago. Crane's eyes narrowed. I see. And you cared for her? Yes. She was ill for many years before. Katya stopped, the memories threatening to choke her. Why does this matter? Because, Crane said slowly, grief leaves marks. Particularly maternal grief, even if the child wasn't biologically yours. It changes the chemical composition of your skin, your scent, the sound of your heartbeat. Infants are remarkably sensitive to such things. You're saying she senses my grief? Katya's voice was barely above a whisper. I'm saying she recognizes loss in you because she feels it herself. Her mother died hours after her birth. She may not remember consciously, but the body remembers everything. Crane turned to Theron. The child is bonding with someone who understands abandonment. It's not magic. It's just human. Theron's jaw was tight. Will she grow out of it? Possibly. But forcing separation now would be traumatic. I recommend allowing the attachment to continue, at least for the next several months. After Crane left, Theron stood at the window for a long time, his back to Katya and Serafina. Your Majesty? Katya ventured. Do you know what it's like, he said quietly, to fail the one person who needed you most? Yes. He turned and she saw the raw grief in his eyes. Every night I hear her crying and know that I can't fix it. That I'm not enough. That I failed her mother and now I'm failing her. You're not failing her, Katya said. You brought me here, didn't you? You're trying. That's more than most fathers would do. I'm not most fathers. I'm a king. I should be able to command comfort, demand peace. Instead, I'm helpless against an 8-month-old child. Serafina chose that moment to reach out toward Theron, making a soft cooing sound. He froze. She wants you, Katya said gently. She needs to feel safe first. Slowly, Theron approached. Katya shifted Serafina slightly, angling her so she could see her father but still feel Katya's presence. Talk to her, Katya murmured. It doesn't matter what you say. Just let her hear your voice. Theron looked utterly lost. I don't know what to say to children. Say what you wish someone had said to you. He was silent for a long moment. Then, awkwardly, he reached out and touched Serafina's tiny hand with one finger. Hello, little one, he said, his voice rough. I'm your father. I'm not very good at this, but I'm trying. I promise I'm trying. Serafina grabbed his finger. Katya watched Theron's face transform, grief giving way to something that might have been wonder, and felt her heart crack open. The breakthrough came on the 14th day. Katya was changing Serafina's clothes when she noticed something odd. A small mark on the baby's inner wrist, barely visible against her pale skin. It looked like a birthmark, but the shape was too precise. 3 interlocking circles, delicate as lace. She'd seen that mark before. Her breath caught. It couldn't be. What's wrong? Theron appeared in the doorway, his supernatural senses picking up her distress. Nothing. Just. Katya's mind raced. Your Majesty, may I ask, does Seraphina have any birthmarks? Family markings? No. Why? This. Katya tilted the baby's wrist toward the light. Have you seen this before? Theron crossed the room in 3 strides. When he saw the mark, he went very, very still. Where did that come from? It's been here all along, hasn't it? You just never noticed because she wouldn't let anyone hold her long enough to look. His voice was sharp now. What is it? I don't know if I'm right. I might be going insane. But. Katya rolled up her own sleeve, exposing her inner wrist. The same 3 interlocking circles. It's a family mark, she whispered. Passed down through the Volkov line. My mother had it. Her mother before her. My sister Anya had it. I thought it was just us, just our family, but. Theron grabbed her wrist, not roughly but firmly, examining the mark with an intensity that made Katya's skin burn. This is impossible. I know. My daughter cannot have a Volkov family mark. Her mother was a souled Ashmore, fully vampire, no human ancestry for 6 generations. There is no way. Unless she's not Isolde's daughter. The words fell like stones into a frozen lake. Theron released Katya's wrist and stepped back. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. Explain. I don't know how to explain it. But that mark, it doesn't appear randomly. It's genetic. Specific. If Seraphina has it, then she has Volkov blood. And if she has Volkov blood, then either someone in my family line is hiding human ancestry, which is impossible, or he stopped. Or this child is not who I was told she is. The temperature in the room plummeted. Dr. Crane, Theron said. He delivered her. He was there when Isolde died. He's been the royal physician for 200 years. You think he lied to you? I think, Theron said slowly, each word carefully controlled, that I've been a fool. He turned and walked out. Katya stood frozen, Seraphina in her arms, her mind reeling. If the baby wasn't Isolde's daughter, then whose was she? And why would anyone swap an infant princess for her? The memory hit her like a lightning strike. 3 years ago. The hospital in the city. Anya, dying, pregnant from the assault during the raid. The baby born premature, underweight, the doctors saying she wouldn't survive the night. I'm sorry, Miss Volkov. Sometimes these things, it's better this way. The baby, crying weakly, wrapped in a thin blanket. Anya, bleeding out, begging, please, please save her. Don't let her die. And then the doctor with the cold eyes, the one who'd appeared from nowhere, offering a solution. We can help. But you have to trust us. Katya, desperate and grieving, anything. Just save the baby. The injection. The darkness. Waking up hours later to find Anya dead and the baby gone. I'm sorry. We tried everything. The infant didn't make it. An empty crib. No body. Just gone. Katya's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, Seraphina still in her arms, and the world shattered around her. Anya, she whispered. Oh God. Anya. Seraphina looked up at her with storm-gray eyes, eyes exactly like Anya's had been, and reached up to touch Katya's tears. Mama, the baby said clearly. Her first word. Katya started sobbing. Theron found her like that an hour later, curled around Seraphina on the nursery floor, both of them silent, both of them somehow knowing that everything had changed. Katya. His voice was gentle in a way she'd never heard before. I need you to tell me everything. So she did. The words poured out in jagged pieces, Zarya burning, Anya's assault, the pregnancy no one expected her to survive, the premature birth in a city hospital where a mysterious doctor had promised miracles. The injection. The lies. They told me she died, Katya whispered. Both of them. Anya and the baby. They said the infant was too weak, that there was nothing they could do. I was sedated. When I woke up, there were death certificates. A closed casket funeral. I never saw the body. I believed them. Theron knelt beside her, his expression carved from ice and fury. Describe the doctor. Tall, silver hair, cold eyes. Katya's breath hitched. He spoke with absolute authority. Everyone deferred to him. He said he was from a private medical research facility, that they specialized in difficult births. Dr. Elias Crane. What? The man who delivered my daughter. The man who told me Isolde bled out during childbirth. The man who handed me a crying infant and said, "Your Majesty, I'm sorry. The Queen didn't survive. But your daughter, your beautiful daughter, she's perfect." Theron's voice was razor-sharp. He's been my physician for 2 centuries. I trusted him absolutely. Why would he do this? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. He stood, pulling Katya up with him. His hands were gentle but firm on her shoulders. Listen to me carefully. If what we suspect is true, if this child is your niece, stolen and presented as my heir, then we're not dealing with a simple deception. This is conspiracy. Treason. And whoever orchestrated it had resources, authority, and a reason. What reason could possibly justify? Power. Theron's eyes blazed. My brother, Marcus, has been circling the throne for centuries. He's next in line if I die without an heir. But if I have a legitimate child, even one born of a human surrogate, which is legal under vampire law, then the succession is secured. He paused. Unless that child isn't legitimate at all. You think your brother did this? I think someone wanted to ensure that my heir could be challenged when the time was right. A blood test would reveal the truth. And when it did, the throne would be contested. The realm would fracture. And in the chaos, he'd take power. Yes. Serafina made a soft questioning sound. Katya rocked her instinctively, her mind reeling. But if she's not your daughter, then where is your real daughter? If Isolde was pregnant, that's what we need to find out. Theron's jaw was set. Tonight, we confront Crane. We get the truth. All of it. And if he doesn't talk? Theron's smile was colder than winter. Then I'll make him. The castle had a dungeon. Of course it did. Katya descended the spiral stairs with Serafina strapped to her chest in a makeshift sling. The baby had refused to be left behind, screaming the moment Katya tried to hand her to a nurse. Theron had simply nodded, as if bringing an infant to an interrogation was perfectly normal. Maybe in his world, the dungeon was exactly what she expected: stone, chains, the smell of old blood and older fear. Dr. Crane sat in a chair at the center of a warded circle, his hands bound with silver that glowed faintly with suppression magic. He looked up as they entered, and Katya saw no fear in his eyes. Only calculation. Your Majesty, he said calmly. I wondered how long it would take. Then you admit it. Theron's voice was death itself. I admit nothing. But I'm not surprised you've finally begun to ask questions. Theron crossed the circle. The wards parted for him like water. He grabbed Crane by the throat and lifted him bodily from the chair. Where? Daughter. Dead, Crane gasped. Has been for 3 years. I told you the truth about that much, at least. Liar. The Queen's pregnancy was failing, Your Majesty. The child was dying inside her. Hybrid pregnancies are notoriously unstable. The vampire blood and whatever human essence remains in our biology war against each other. I tried everything. Blood transfusions, magical stabilization, even forbidden rituals from the old ways. Nothing worked. So you let my queen die. I saved your reign. Crane's voice turned sharp. You needed an heir. The council was circling. Your brother was positioning himself. If Isolde died in childbirth with no surviving child, the succession would have been contested within weeks. We would have had civil war. We. Theron's grip tightened. Who else knew? Does it matter? The decision was made at the highest levels. For the good of the realm. You murdered my wife and stole a child to replace mine. That wasn't for the good of anyone except you and whoever paid you. Crane laughed, a horrible wet sound. Your wife was already dying. I simply accelerated the inevitable. And the child I gave you was real, healthy, viable. A human infant from a destroyed village, one no one would miss. I even chose carefully, a girl with the right coloring, the right age. She would have grown up believing herself your daughter. The perfect heir. Loyal, trainable, and completely legitimate in the eyes of the law, as long as no one looked too closely at the blood work. Katya felt sick. You took her from the hospital, she whispered. You told me she died. You gave me a death certificate and took my sister's baby to present as a vampire princess. Crane's cold eyes found hers. You should be grateful. I saved her life. That infant would have died within hours if I'd left her in that human hospital. Instead, she's lived in luxury, protected, cherished. You're welcome. Theron dropped him. Crane hit the floor hard, gasping. Who ordered this? Theron demanded. Who authorized you to swap the children? I want immunity. You want what? Immunity from prosecution. A guarantee of safety. Then I'll tell you everything, names, dates, the entire conspiracy. Crane pulled himself upright, dignity somehow intact despite his bleeding lip. Otherwise, kill me now. I've lived 400 years. I'm not afraid of death. You should be. Theron's voice dropped to something inhuman. Because I can make 400 years feel like 4,000 before I let you die. Threaten all you like. I know what I'm worth. And you know you need answers more than you need revenge. The standoff stretched. Katya held Serafina tighter, the baby miraculously quiet, as if she understood the gravity of the moment. Finally, Theron spoke. You have until midnight. Immunity in exchange for names. But if you lie to me, if I find out you've held back even a single detail, I will end you in ways that make the old tortures look merciful. Agreed. Start talking. Crane settled back in his chair, suddenly looking very old and very tired. It began 5 years ago. Your brother, Marcus, approached me with a proposition. The story that unfolded was worse than Katya imagined. Marcus Ashmore had been planning this for decades. He'd watched his brother rule for 6 centuries, watched him remain unshakable, unkillable, eternal. The only way to challenge Theron's throne was through succession, specifically, through undermining the legitimacy of any heir. He knew Isolde's pregnancy was failing, Crane said. I'd told him in confidence, a mistake I regret. He saw an opportunity. If the child died and Isolde died, you would be vulnerable. But if the child survived as a fake, a human child passed off as your daughter, then eventually the truth would come out. Blood tests, medical examinations. The council would discover the deception, and your claim to the throne would be destroyed along with your reputation. Why wait 3 years? Theron demanded. Because the plan required patience. The child needed to grow, to be established as your heir in the public eye. Then, at the perfect moment, perhaps when she came of age or when you tried to name her as official successor, Marcus would reveal the truth. You'd be humiliated. The council would fracture. And in the chaos, he'd step in as the rightful heir. And you went along with this. He paid well. And he promised me a position of power in his new court. Crane smiled bitterly. I'm old, Your Majesty. I've seen kingdoms rise and fall. I simply wanted to be on the winning side. You chose wrong. Perhaps. Or perhaps you'll lose anyway. Marcus has more support than you think. Half the council would back his claim if they knew the truth about your daughter. Katya couldn't stay silent anymore. What happened to the Queen's Real baby? Her voice shook. You said she died, but where? How? Crane looked at her with something almost like pity. The child was stillborn. I delivered her myself. She never took a breath. He paused. I burned the body. There's no grave, no evidence. Just ash. Katya's eyes burned with tears. Theron's hand found her shoulder, steadying. And my niece. Katya whispered. Serafina, she was supposed to die too, wasn't she? You told me she wouldn't survive the night. She shouldn't have survived. Premature by 6 weeks, underweight, born to a dying mother. By all medical logic, she should have been dead within hours. Crane's expression shifted to something almost like respect. But she was stubborn. So I saw an opportunity, a healthy human infant to replace the dead vampire one. The age was close enough. The timing was perfect. And you were grieving, sedated, easy to deceive. You monster. I'm a pragmatist. Theron pulled Katya back before she could lunge at him. Marcus, Theron said coldly. Where is he? The Winter Estate. He's been waiting there, gathering support, preparing for the revelation. Crane smiled. He'll be disappointed to learn you've discovered the truth ahead of schedule. He'll be dead before he's disappointed. You can't kill him. He's your brother. The council will never forgive royal fratricide. Watch me. Theron turned to leave, but Crane's voice stopped him. One more thing, Your Majesty. The child, Serafina, or whatever her real name is, she's bonded to the Volkov woman. That bond is real. But you should know, human infants who bond that strongly to a caregiver can die if separated too abruptly. It's called failure to thrive. She'll stop eating, stop sleeping, waste away. He paused. So if you're planning to return her to her real family, do it carefully. Otherwise, you'll have killed her just as surely as if you'd snapped her neck. Katya felt the blood drain from her face. Theron's expression was unreadable. Come, he said to Katya. We have work to do. The War Council convened at dawn. Theron had summoned his most trusted advisors, General Aldrich, Captain Sarah, Counselor Magnus, and a handful of others who'd served House Ashmore for centuries. They stood around a massive table in the strategy room, looking grim. Katya wasn't invited, but she came anyway, Serafina still strapped to her chest. No one tried to stop her. The situation is this, Theron said without preamble. My heir is not my biological daughter. She is, in fact, a human child stolen from a destroyed village and presented as my own to prevent a succession crisis. The conspiracy was orchestrated by my brother Marcus with the help of Dr. Crane. If this truth becomes public, the realm will fracture. Silence. Then Aldrich, a scarred vampire who looked like he'd fought in wars before recorded history, spoke. If we eliminate Marcus quietly and maintain the deception, the realm stays stable. The child grows up as your daughter. No one needs to know. No, Katya said. Every head turned toward her. No. She's not a political pawn. She's a person. She has family. She has a name, not Serafina, but... She stopped. The truth was, Anya had never gotten to name her baby. She'd died hours after the birth, her last words a plea to save her child. Theron looked at Katya for a long moment. What would you have me do? He asked quietly. Return her to you? Take her from the only home she's known, from the only father she's ever had? I may not be her biological parent, but I've raised her. I've held her through 6 months of screaming. I've failed her and tried again and failed again until you came. Does that count for nothing? It counts for everything, Katya whispered. But she's not yours to keep. She's not yours either. Not anymore. The words hit like a slap. She's my blood. My family. My responsibility. She's my daughter, Theron said, and there was anguish in his voice now. Legal, emotional, real in every way that matters. You think I don't know she's human? You think I don't understand what that means? She'll age while I don't. She'll die while I continue. I'll watch her grow old and return to dust, and I'll keep existing because that's what I do, I endure. But I chose her anyway. I chose to love her anyway. And now you want to take that away. Serafina, sensing the tension, began to whimper. Katya rocked her automatically, torn between two impossible truths. I don't know what to do, she admitted. I don't know what's right. Then we make a new choice, Sarah said. The captain was young by vampire standards, barely a century old, with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. Neither of you has to give her up entirely. Joint guardianship. The girl grows up knowing both of you, knowing her history, but also knowing stability. The council will never accept it, Magnus warned. A human co-parent to the heir? It's unprecedented. So was stealing an infant and lying to a king, Sarah shot back. We're past precedent. Theron looked at Katya. Could you live with that? Sharing her? Could you? I don't have a choice. She needs you. That much is clear. But I need her too. His voice dropped. I've needed her from the moment I thought she was mine. Finding out she's not doesn't change that. It just makes it more complicated. Katya looked down at Serafina, at the baby who had her sister's eyes and the Volkov family mark and 3 years of stolen time wrapped up in tiny, perfect hands. Anya would want her to be safe, Katya said finally. She'd want her to be loved. If you can promise me both those things. I can. Then yes. Joint guardianship. But, she met his eyes. Her name isn't Serafina. Then what is it? Katya thought about her sister, about the Volkov family line, about all the women who'd carried that 3-circle mark through generations of joy and grief. Anya, she said. Her name is Anya. After her mother. Theron was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Anya Ashmore Volkov, he said. Heir to House Ashmore. Daughter of 2 families. Bridge between worlds. The baby, Anya, looked between them and smiled. They came from Marcus 3 days later. Theron led a contingent of 50 shadow guards, the most elite warriors in the vampire realm, soldiers who'd sworn blood oaths of loyalty and would die before they broke them. Katya came too, despite every advisor's protest. He stole my niece, she said flatly. I'm coming. Theron didn't argue. The Winter Estate sat at the northern edge of the vampire territories, a fortress of ice and black stone built into the side of a mountain. It was beautiful in the way predators were beautiful, sleek, dangerous, designed for intimidation. Marcus was waiting for them. He stood in the great hall, surrounded by his own guard, nearly 100 vampires, all armed, all ready. He looked like Theron's shadow-given form, same height, same build, same sharp features. But where Theron's eyes were storm blue, Marcus's were amber, and they gleamed with something that might have been madness or simply ambition so vast it looked insane. Brother, Marcus said, his voice echoing through the hall. I wondered when you'd finally piece it together. You betrayed me. Theron's voice was deadly calm. I saved you. The realm was fracturing. You were vulnerable. I gave you an heir, stability, time to secure your reign. You gave me a lie. I gave you a tool. Marcus gestured dismissively. A human infant, yes, but one who could serve your purposes perfectly. Raise her, name her, use her. And when the time came, when you inevitably discovered the truth, you'd have no choice but to step down. The council would demand it. And I'd be there to take over, as I was always meant to. You orchestrated the destruction of Zaria. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Marcus smiled. That village was collateral damage. We needed a human infant of the right age, the right look. The raid provided cover. The hospital provided opportunity. Dr. Crane provided expertise. It was elegant, really. Katya felt her world tilt. You killed my family. You killed Anya. You destroyed everything I had for a political scheme? I killed no one personally. The humans did that themselves. They're always so eager to burn each other. I simply encouraged the conflict. Pointed a few raiders in the right direction. Ensured they'd be thorough. Marcus's smile widened. Your sister's death was unfortunate but necessary. Loose ends, you understand? Katya lunged. Theron caught her before she could cross the space, holding her back with inhuman strength. Let me go, she snarled. Let me. Not yet, Theron said quietly. Then, louder, Marcus Ashmore, you are under arrest for treason, conspiracy, and the murder of innocents. You will stand trial before the full council. Will I? Marcus laughed. Look around, brother. I have 100 warriors to your 50. And half the council already supports my claim. If we go to trial, you'll be the one judged, for harboring a false heir, for lying to the realm, for letting your emotions compromise your judgment. Then we don't go to trial. The temperature in the hall dropped 20 degrees. You'd kill me? Marcus looked genuinely surprised. Your own brother? The council will destroy you. The council serves the realm, not your ambition. And the realm doesn't need a king who orchestrates massacres for political convenience. The realm needs a king who understands that power requires sacrifice. You've grown soft, Theron. Human attachments, emotional connections, they make you weak. That child you're protecting? She's made you vulnerable. And in our world, vulnerability is death. No, Katya said, her voice steady despite her rage. Vulnerability is strength. It's caring about something more than power. It's being willing to risk everything for someone who needs you. That's what you'll never understand. You're not strong. You're just hollow. Marcus's expression twisted. Kill them, he commanded. The hall erupted. Theron's shadow guards moved with lethal precision, meeting Marcus's forces in a clash of steel and supernatural speed. The sound was deafening, swords against armor, bodies hitting stone, the roar of vampires unleashing centuries of contained violence. Theron moved through it like a force of nature, cutting down anyone who stood between him and Marcus. Katya ran in the opposite direction, toward a side exit where she'd seen a glint of gold. Anya's crib. Because of course Marcus had brought the baby. Of course he'd use an infant as leverage. Katya reached the room and found Anya awake, crying, reaching for her with desperate hands. A single guard stood watch, young, uncertain. Please, Katya said. She's just a baby. Let me take her. The guard looked torn. Then, surprisingly, he stepped aside. I didn't sign up for child murder, he muttered. Get her out of here. Katya grabbed Anya and ran. Behind her, the battle raged. She could hear Theron's voice, cold and commanding. Stand down, Marcus. It's over. It's never over. Not while I breathe. That, Theron said, can be arranged. Katya didn't stay to watch. She ran through corridors of ice and stone, Anya clutched to her chest, until she burst through a side door into the freezing mountain air. The cold hit like a wall. Anya screamed. Katya pulled off her own coat and wrapped it around the baby, stumbling down the mountain path toward where they'd left the horses. She'd made it maybe 100 yards when she heard footsteps behind her. Marcus. He looked worse now, his clothes torn, his face spattered with blood that wasn't his own. But his eyes were still burning with that terrible amber light. Give her to me, he said. Never. She's mine. My insurance. My plan. You think Theron won this? He's won nothing. The council will tear him apart when they learn the truth. But if I have the child, if I can prove she's human, prove the deception, I win anyway. She's not a pawn. She's a person. She's a tool. Marcus moved closer. And I'll use her however I see fit. He lunged. Katya twisted, but he was too fast. His hand closed around Anya's blanket, yanking hard. Anya screamed. And the mountains screamed with her. The sound was impossible, a child's cry amplified 1,000 times, reverberating through the stone and ice and air itself. The force of it sent Marcus stumbling backward, his hands going to his ears. Katya stared at Anya. The baby's eyes were glowing, not vampire red, but silver white, the color of moonlight on snow. The Volkov mark on her wrist blazed with the same light. Neat, Anya said clearly in perfect Russian. Plokoi chelovek. Badman. The mountain trembled. And then Theron was there, appearing from nowhere, his hand closing around Marcus's throat. You shouldn't have touched them, he said quietly. Marcus struggled, clawing at Theron's grip. Can't, the council? The council answers to me. And I answer to the people I've failed to protect for too long. Theron's eyes were completely black now, bleeding shadows. You wanted to see what real power looks like, brother? Let me show you. What happened next, Katya didn't fully understand. Theron's free hand moved in a complex pattern, and shadows erupted from the ground like living things. They wrapped around Marcus, tighter and tighter, until his brother's screams became muffled, then silent. When the shadows receded, Marcus was gone. Just gone. No body, no ash. Nothing. Banishment, Theron said, his voice hollow. To the void between realms. He'll exist there forever, conscious, aware, but unable to interact with anything. Unable to die. He looked at Katya. It's worse than death. And he deserves worse than death. Katya nodded, too shaken to speak. Theron approached slowly, carefully, like she might bolt. He looked down at Anya, who had stopped glowing but was still watching him with those unervingly intelligent eyes. She spoke Russian, he said. Yes. And she called me. He stopped. In Russian, when vampires were referred to by fearful humans, they used a specific term. But Anya hadn't used that word. She'd said something else entirely. Theron finished quietly. She called me Papa. Katya's throat tightened. She knows you, she whispered. However this started, whatever lies brought us here, she knows you're her father now. Theron reached out, and Anya grabbed his finger with both tiny hands. Duh, the baby said solemnly. Moi papa. My papa. And then she reached for Katya too. Mama. Katya started crying. Theron pulled them both close, wrapping them in his arms as the mountain wind howled around them. We need a new plan, he said finally. Yes. One that doesn't involve lies or stolen identities or political schemes. Just truth. Just truth. He looked down at Anya. All of it. Who she is, where she came from, why she matters. The council will decide what happens next. And if they reject her? Then we leave. Theron's voice was firm. All three of us. We walk away from this throne, this realm, this entire world. And we find somewhere that family actually means something. You'd give up your kingdom? I'd give up anything for her. For both of you. Anya yawned, perfectly content, already falling asleep between them. Katya looked at Theron, this ancient, powerful, terrifying vampire king who just banished his own brother to eternal torment, and saw only a man trying desperately to do right by a child who wasn't his. We go back together, she said. We tell the truth together. And whatever happens, we face it together. Together, Theron agreed. They walked back up the mountain, toward a castle full of waiting answers and uncertain futures. But they walked together. And somehow, that made all the difference. The Grand Council chamber was a cathedral of power, vaulted ceilings that disappeared into shadow, walls lined with the crests of vampire houses that had existed for millennia, and at the center, a raised dais where 12 ancient vampires sat in judgment. Katya stood before them, Anya in her arms, Theron at her side. The chamber was packed. Every noble, every counselor, every vampire of rank had come to witness this. Word had spread quickly. The king's heir was a lie, and the truth would be revealed today. Lord Castellan, eldest of the council at nearly 2,000 years, spoke first. King Theron, you have called this assembly to address matters of succession and legitimacy. The floor is yours. Theron stepped forward, and Katya marveled at his composure. He looked every inch the king, tall, commanding, utterly in control. 3 years ago, he began, I was told my daughter was born healthy but that my queen, Isolde, had died in childbirth. I was given an infant to raise. I was told she was mine by blood and by right. He paused. I was lied to. Gasps rippled through the chamber. The child I've raised as Seraphina Ashmore is not Isolde's daughter. She is, in fact, a human infant named Katya Volkov, stolen from a destroyed village and presented as my heir as part of a conspiracy orchestrated by my brother Marcus and executed by Dr. Elias Crane. The chamber erupted in chaos. Impossible. The bloodline. This is treason. Silence. Castellan's voice cracked like thunder. The room obeyed. King Theron, these are serious accusations. Do you have proof? I have the testimony of Dr. Crane, given under oath and recorded. I have the testimony of Katya Volkov, the child's biological aunt. And I have this. Theron nodded to Captain Sarah, who stepped forward carrying a leather case. Inside was a series of blood samples and medical reports. Independent blood tests, Sarah explained, conducted by 3 separate healers unaffiliated with House Ashmore. All confirm that the child has no genetic relation to King Theron or the late Queen Isolde. She is fully human. The silence was absolute. Furthermore, Theron continued, we have evidence that Marcus orchestrated the raid on Zaria specifically to obtain a human infant for this deception. He intended to use the child as a weapon against me, either to secure the succession initially, or to reveal the deception later and destabilize my reign. Where is Prince Marcus now? Another counselor asked. Banished to the void. For treason, conspiracy, and the murder of innocents. More gasps. Vampire laws were strict about royal punishment. Family ties usually protected even the guilty. Banishment to the void was reserved for the most heinous crimes. You executed your own brother, Castellan said slowly. I did what was necessary to protect the realm. And now you ask us to accept a human child as your heir? No. Theron's voice was firm. I ask you to acknowledge the truth and allow me to choose my own path forward. Anya is human. She will age, die, never inherit vampiric power. She cannot rule the vampire realm as it currently exists. Then what do you propose? Theron looked at Katya. She nodded. I propose, Theron said, that we acknowledge Anya as my ward, not my heir. I will continue to raise her alongside her biological family. And when the time comes, I will name a new successor, perhaps from a cadet branch of House Ashmore, perhaps from another house entirely. But the succession will be legitimate, honest, and in the best interests of the realm. You would give up the possibility of a blood heir? I never had that possibility. Isolde's child died. I've known for 3 years that I would never have children of my own bloodline. This changes nothing except that the lie is now revealed. Castellan studied Theron for a long moment. And the woman? Katya Volkov. What is her role in this? She is Anya's family. She has every right to be part of the child's life. A human living in the royal household? Unprecedented. So was stealing an infant and lying to a king, Katya said, finding her voice. Yet here we are. Several counselors smiled despite themselves. Castellan leaned back. This is irregular. The council will need time to deliberate. Deliberate quickly, Theron said. Because I won't live in lies anymore. If the council cannot accept the truth, then I abdicate. Effective immediately. The chamber went deathly silent. You would abandon the throne? Castellan looked shocked. I would choose family over power. Yes. And if we accept your proposal? If we allow this arrangement? Then I continue to serve the realm as I have for 6 centuries. But I do so honestly with a family I've chosen, and with the understanding that some things, some people, matter more than crowns. Anya chose that moment to reach out toward Castellan and say, perfectly clearly, Zdravstvuyte. Hello in Russian. The ancient vampire's expression softened almost imperceptibly. The child speaks Russian? Fluently, Katya said. It was her first language. She responds to it better than common tongue. Fascinating. Castellan stood. The council will deliberate. You will have our answer by sunset. The waiting was agony. Katya and Theron sat in his private chambers, Anya playing on the floor between them with wooden blocks. Outside, the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon. What will you do if they say no? Katya asked quietly. Leave. Start over somewhere far from here. Raise Anya as a normal child. Theron smiled bitterly. Or as normal as possible for a human girl with a vampire father. You'd really give up your kingdom? In a heartbeat. Why? He looked at her, and Katya saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Because 6 months ago I was empty. Going through the motions of ruling, of existing, but not really living. Then you walked into that nursery, sang a lullaby in Russian, and everything changed. His voice dropped. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost when Isolde died. Not love. I never really loved her, if I'm honest. We married for politics, for duty. But you gave me hope. The possibility that family could be real, chosen, something more than bloodlines and succession. Theron. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know this is complicated. I know you didn't choose this life. But I need you to know that you and Anya, you're not obligations. You're not political tools. You're mine in the way that matters most. I choose you. Every day I choose you. Katya felt tears sting her eyes. I choose you too, she whispered. Both of you. However this started, whatever lies brought us here, this is real now. This family is real. Anya looked up at them and smiled, her storm-gray eyes bright. Semya, she said in Russian. Family. A knock at the door. Captain Sarah entered, her expression neutral. The council has reached a decision. They reconvened in the great hall. Castellan stood at the center of the dais, the weight of centuries on his ancient shoulders. We have deliberated, he said. And while this situation is unprecedented, we find that King Theron has acted with integrity in revealing the deception rather than maintaining it. We acknowledge that Prince Marcus's actions constitute treason of the highest order, and we support his banishment. Katya's heart pounded. Furthermore, Castellan continued, we acknowledge Anya Volkov as King Theron's ward. She will be raised in the royal household, educated as befitting her station, but will not be considered heir to the throne. When the time comes, King Theron will name a successor from among the noble houses. Relief flooded through Katya. However, Castellan added, and Katya's stomach dropped, there is the matter of the human woman. Katya Volkov is Anya's family, Theron said firmly. We understand that. And we propose a solution. Miss Volkov will be granted the title of royal guardian. She will live in the royal household, raise the child alongside you, and be given full parental authority. She will be protected by the crown and treated as a member of House Ashmore in all but blood. Katya stared. You're giving me a title? We're giving you recognition, Castellan said. The child needs both of you. That much is clear. And frankly, the realm could use more examples of human-vampire cooperation. You'll be a bridge, Miss Volkov. Much like your parents tried to be. Tears streamed down Katya's face. There is one condition, Castellan added. Given the unusual nature of this arrangement, there can be no appearance of impropriety. Which means... He paused, looking between Katya and Theron with something that might have been amusement. If you two are going to raise a child together in the royal household, you should probably make it official. Katya blinked. Official? He means marriage, Theron said quietly. He's suggesting we marry. For the sake of appearances, Castellan added quickly. Purely political, of course. Unless. He raised an eyebrow. Theron looked at Katya. What do you think? I think, Katya said slowly, that we've built this family on truth. So let's keep being truthful. She took a breath. Marry me not for politics or appearances. Marry me because I love you. Because I choose you. Because Anya deserves parents who choose each other, not just her. Theron's composure finally cracked. He pulled Katya close, his forehead resting against hers. Yes, he whispered. Yes to all of it. Anya, still in Katya's arms, patted both their faces. Duh, she said solemnly. Mama and Papa. Mama and Papa. The council chamber erupted in applause. The gardens of Shadowmere Castle were in bloom. It shouldn't have been possible. Vampire estates didn't do seasons, didn't do life. But somehow, in the year since Katya had arrived, things had changed. Flowers grew. Trees budded. The eternal twilight had softened into something that almost resembled spring. Anya toddled through the grass, chasing butterflies with the single-minded determination of a 2-year-old. She was speaking in full sentences now, fluent in both Russian and common tongue, though she still preferred Russian for anything important. Katya watched from a bench, her hand resting on the small swell of her belly. 6 months pregnant. Another impossibility in a life that had become defined by them. You should be resting, Theron said, appearing beside her with supernatural silence. I'm fine. She's fine. We're all fine. You're growing another human inside you while chasing a toddler. You're not fine, you're heroic. Katya laughed. You're ridiculous. I'm in love. He sat beside her, pulling her close. There's a difference. They watched Anya successfully catch a butterfly, hold it gently for 3 seconds, then release it with a delighted giggle. She's happy, Katya said softly. She's loved. That's all children really need. Do you ever regret it? Giving up the chance at a vampire heir? Not even for a second. Theron's hand joined hers on her belly. This child will be human too. She'll age and die just like Anya will. Just like you will. And I'll outlive all of you. His voice was quiet. But I'll have loved you. That's worth more than eternity. What if I could make you human? Katya asked suddenly. There are stories, old magic that can reverse the transformation. Would you want that? Theron was silent for a long moment. Ask me again in 50 years, he said finally. When Anya is grown and this new little one is finding her way. Ask me then if I want to be mortal, to age alongside you, to die when you die. He kissed her temple. Because I think the answer will be yes. Papa! Anya came running, a flower clutched in her fist. Smatri! Beautiful Zvezda moya. My star. Theron lifted her onto his lap. Did you pick that for Mama? Da. Anya thrust the flower at Katya. Dlaya Mama I sestri. For Mama and sister. Katya took the flower, her heart so full it hurt. Thank you, sweetheart. Anya settled between them, content, secure. After a moment, she started humming. The same lullaby Katya had sung that first night, the Volkov family song that had started everything. Spat, Anya announced. Sip. She closed her eyes, still humming. Katya looked at Theron. He looked back at her. And between them, in the gardens of an impossible castle, in a family built on truth instead of lies, a child slept. Finally, blessedly, peacefully slept. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about romance alone. They're about families forged in fire, about truths that break through lies, about the courage it takes to choose love over power. King Theron gave up the perfect political heir for a human child who called him Papa in Russian. Katya gave up her grief and her right to vengeance for the chance to build something new. And Anya, stolen, lied about, used as a pawn, became the bridge that proved family isn't about blood. It's about choice. 3 years ago, a village burned. A baby was stolen. A queen died. And a conspiracy tried to destroy a kingdom. But it failed. Because one woman walked into a nursery and sang a lullaby in Russian. Because one king chose truth over comfort. Because one child refused to stop crying until she found home. If this story moved you, if you believe that family is what we choose, not just what we're born into, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what would you sacrifice for the people you love? Tomorrow, I'll be back with another story. Another world. Another impossible family finding their way home. Until then, remember, the truth will set you free. But first, it might just break your heart.